From the Forbidden Island to somewhere over the rainbow, one of Hawaii's most notable musicians had a short but interesting ride to the top. Israel Kamakawiwo'ole's official YouTube video of Somewhere Over the Rainbow has surpassed 1 billion views, which is unsurprising, given its sweet, gentle tenderness. But who is the ukulele player with the angelic voice? The story of Israel, widely known as is filled with sadness, heartbreak, and struggles. Iz's Hawaiian heritage can be clearly heard in his music, and his connection with the islands runs deep. He was born in Honolulu in the months around Hawaii's transition from territory to U.S. state in 1959. His mother has an even more incredible and rare connection to the islands, according to his official biography. Evangeline Kiale Kamakawiwo'ole was born on the island of Ni'ihau. Otherwise known as the Forbidden Island, it's off-limits to pretty much everyone, including other native Hawaiians. It's pretty much by invitation or official tour only, since it's private property. The island can be seen by anyone standing on the shores of Kauai, and it's been privately owned since 1864. That's when it was bought from King Kamehameha V by the Sinclair family. According to ancestor Bryce Robinson and ABC News, the truly off-limits part didn't really kick in until the 1950s. With the outbreak of a polio epidemic, the island closed its borders, didn't have a single case of polio, and kept its doors closed. Today, it's still home to just around 100 people who continue to call the 70-square-mile island home, and who continue to turn away almost all hopeful visitors. One Kauai resident explained, "Ni'ihau was always like a silent sentinel out there across the ocean, giving us some comfort from storms and the wide-open ocean out beyond." Iz's earliest years were spent growing up in the Honolulu suburb of Kaimuki. It wasn't an easy childhood, though. According to Facing Future by Dan Coyce, a book about the album of the same name, his parents worked nights most of the time. Jobs were difficult to come by, and while his mother hustled to find whatever work she could, his father drove a garbage truck. Meanwhile, the young Iz was shuffled between family members. Much of his time was spent with his grandfather, who spoiled him and encouraged him to partake in all the area's finest foods to an extreme to help fill the void left by his parents. He also neglected the sort of life-guiding correction that Iz needed. According to his uncle, Iz was a brat, and fighting was a daily occurrence.
One of the rottenest, spoiled kids that I ever saw in my life. I swear.
He was bullied because of his weight, was expelled from school several times, and preferred cutting classes to actually attending. Summers were spent away from the city, with his grandfather, on their relatively rural ancestral home of Ni'ihau. His time was spent immersed in the traditional culture of the island, and would mature into a deep-seated appreciation for his ancestry. But he was also predictably bored by it all as a child. Iz's family was a musical one, and according to his biography, he was just 6 years old when he picked up a ukulele and started participating in his family's music making. Iz fell in love with it, and those who knew him at school recalled that he would much rather sit outside and play music than go to class. In one interview, Iz reminisced about his earliest instruments, saying that he'd had a ukulele for almost as long as he could remember. His first ukulele had been a gift from his uncle. He said, "You couldn't take the ukulele away from me. I learned just from listening and watching. Watching and listening pays off." 5 years later, the 11-year-old Iz started turning music into a legitimate career when he began performing alongside his older brother on a Waikiki catamaran boat tour. By then, he already knew what he wanted to play.
I never had one side tugging, like the rock and roll and Hawaiian. Was never a tugging of, this and that.
Iz's love of music and dislike of the more traditional parts of life were a running theme. When he was older, he was theoretically enrolled in Waianae High School, but his longtime friend Del Beasley recalled, "I saw him at school once or twice, but never in class. He'd come to school in the morning, take his ukulele, and then that's it. He'd be at the beach like 8 or 9 o'clock. Iz traded high school for the beach life after he and a friend got in trouble for holding impromptu concerts in the school's bathroom. Not only were the instruments lifted from the music department, but it got to be such a popular thing that other students were sneaking in to listen. It was during one of his many days on the beach that he happened to meet Jerry Coco, another aspiring musician who was cutting his community college classes. Coco invited Iz to join his group of friends the next time they got together to play, and from there, the group also invited Iz's cousin and brother. The whole group just kind of clicked and took on a name, the Makaha Sons of Ni'ihau. Although the roster has changed over the years, the Makaha Sons are still performing in 2023. The Makaha Sons of Ni'ihau would go on to be one of the most famous groups playing Hawaiian music, and along with a slew of other awards, they were inducted into the Hawaiian Music Hall of Fame in 2012. Success wasn't instant though, and the band definitely paid their dues. Facing Future tells that they started out playing all across Makaha, booking shows at birthday parties and school dances, as well as appearing at the parties that popped up along the island's beaches. After about a year of that, they got what they considered their first official concert, headlining a fundraising event organized for a youth football team. Their band name was featured alongside some of the heavy hitters of the day, and it made them step back and consider the fact that maybe it wasn't just a wild dream after all. Maybe they could make it as legit musicians. When they started booking shows at actual nightclubs, they thought they'd made it. The year after that first fundraising concert, they recorded their first album. For years, Iz was content to be one of the Makaha sons of Ni'ihau, even as other band members came and went. That included his older brother. Says Vice, Skippy Kamakawiwo'ole was one of the band's founding members and died of an obesity-related heart condition when he was just 28 years old. According to Hawaii News Now, Iz spent 17 years with the band, and considering that he joined when he was 17, that was a lifetime. However, those 17 years were plagued with health problems, and those who knew him best also knew that he struggled with the belief that he was destined to live a short life. In 1993, 11 years after the death of his brother, Iz came to the conclusion that if he wanted to leave behind a legacy that would support his wife and young daughter, he needed to go solo. He was in the hospital when he called John DeMello, the CEO of the Mountain Apple Company record label. DeMello met him at the hospital, where they sat for a long conversation about Iz's exit from the Makaha Sons and what his solo career would look like. Iz wrote down the songs that had a special meaning for him, and after asking some old friends to join him, they started rehearsing while he was still in the hospital. While Iz's mellow singing voice might not seem like it's the voice of a party animal, it absolutely is. According to Facing Future, his wild ways created some conflict within the group from the very beginning, particularly between him and his more serious older brother. Part of the problem was his regular drug use, but that wasn't the end of it. A year before his brother's death, Israel was arrested after being accused of hitting a man and breaking his jaw. He served a jail sentence, then hit the town immediately upon his release. Marriage and a child didn't change things either, and his wife Marlene candidly recounted the first 7 years they were together. She would come home from work, he would hit the town, and he'd return at 5 a.m. under the influence. As she said in Facing Future, "Years of that used to drive me nuts, but somebody had to be sane and responsible." When he suffered a massive heart attack in 1989, he stopped the drugs and alcohol for a while before relapsing in 1996.
We became matured adults several years before he passed away. I guess through him, he's taught me to not go backwards.
Although Iz has recorded many songs, his most famous is without a doubt his touching rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And according to what sound engineer Milan Bertosa told Ukulele magazine, Iz did the entire thing in one take at 3:30 in the morning. Bertosa recalled that he had just been winding up a long, difficult recording session with another group when his phone rang. It was another one of his recording clients, who wanted to bring a buddy in to use the studio. Bertosa tried to push him off until the following day, but he wasn't taking no for an answer. He recalled, "He puts Iz on the phone, and he's got this soft voice, and he's really polite and really sweet, kind of the embodiment of what a nice Hawaiian person is like." Iz's personality is what sold him, and when he got there, he sat down with his ukulele and nailed it in one take. He went on to do White Sandy Beach too, and Bertosa was so moved by the song that he said, "After those 15 minutes I was thinking, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for a living." When Bertosa passed away in 2023 after suffering a heart attack, Hawaii News Now lauded him as a champion of traditional Hawaiian music. Just 4 years after embarking on his solo career, Israel Kamakawiwo'ole passed away. The official cause of death was a series of obesity-related illnesses that culminated in respiratory failure. Iz, who had been relying on an oxygen tank for a while and required the assistance of a forklift to get on and off stages, was 38 years old at the time of his death, and the entirety of the islands mourned the loss of one of their native sons. Radio stations were bombarded with calls from tearful fans, flags flew at half-mast, and he became only the third person to lie in state at Hawaii's capital. Mountain Apple CEO John DeMello explained to NPR that Iz had a beautiful view on life and death. Iz had told him, "I was scared when I lost my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, but I'm not scared for myself for dying, because I believe all these places are temporary. This is just one shell. When our time comes, don't cry for me. Don't cry for me. Plant a tree, kind of small, then I'll grow big." Iz was cremated after being visited by at least 10,000 people. His ashes were spread in the water of Oahu's Makua Beach, and every year, fans and loved ones alike continue to take an anniversary swim in the same place.
He was one of the nicest giving persons that you're ever gonna know.
Israel Kamakawiwo'ole would have turned 61 years old in 2020, and to celebrate his life, Google commissioned an animated version of his famous Somewhere Over the Rainbow video. Done in conjunction with Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, the video was illustrated by artist Sophie Diao, and to make sure she paid him proper tribute, she reached out to those who knew him best, including his widow Marlene and Mountain Apple Company CEO John DeMello. It was his widow who gave Diao a heartfelt suggestion that would form the basis of her work. Diao told Honolulu Magazine, "When I asked John and Marlene what Israel would have wanted the doodle to be like, Marlene, without missing a beat, responded, 'Happy. Life is beautiful.' He loved life." They also said that no matter what challenges came up in his life, he never lost his determination to keep on going.